Septembryo Radio.
There is something uniquely American about the drive-in movie theater. A space where the glow of a giant screen meets the vastness of the open night skies. For decades, families, couples, and restless teenagers have gathered beneath the stars expecting nothing more than a few hours of cinematic escape. Yet every so often, reality intrudes with something far stranger than fiction. Scattered across the country are accounts of UFOs appearing above these outdoor screens, turning ordinary movie nights into moments of collective awe and bewilderment. And they serve as a reminder that sometimes the most extraordinary sightings arrive when we're looking in an entirely different direction. These are UFOs at the drive-in. 8 cases you've never heard of.
Good evening, folks, and a hearty welcome to our drive-in theater. We have a wonderful evening's entertainment lined up for you. Did you fail to dress up for tonight's show? No tie, an old shirt and slacks, a house dress? Well, don't give it a thought. We're glad you came as you are. We just want you to enjoy yourselves.
While our government's official position is not to speculate on this subject, we can choose to let our minds explore other possibilities, to use our imaginations. For if we consider that astroscientists agree on one point, that the possibility of life elsewhere is not only quite probable, some feel it is there without a doubt. Let us suppose then that these objects are real space vehicles, extraterrestrial in origin, and not an illusion of the mind.
I'm Ryan Sprague, and you are now somewhere in the skies. Gainesville, Texas, 1955. It was a warm June evening at the Skyline Drive-In. The sort of night where people arrived early just to enjoy the breeze and a cold soda pop before the film began. Families settled into convertibles. Teenagers perched on hoods and truck beds. And the faint smell of popcorn drifted across the gravel lot. When the movie flickered to life on the giant outdoor screen, no one could have imagined something far more captivating would appear from the night sky behind it. The first to notice anything odd was a young couple parked near the back row, who saw a pale, oval glow drifting in from the east. Within seconds, others began pointing upward as the light intensified. Hovering just above the height of the screen, a disc-shaped craft revealed itself in complete silence. Its underside ringed with a soft blue glow that pulsated rhythmically. Some witnesses later said they heard a faint hum, something like an electrical transformer, while others insisted the object was entirely soundless. The film continued to play as though indifferent to this disturbance, but most of the audience had already abandoned the storyline unfolding on screen for the mystery unfolding in the heavens above. The craft remained visible for nearly half a minute as it held perfectly still in the air, something that struck many as impossible for any known aircraft at the time. Then, without warning, it tilted slightly, the lights brightened, and it shot off toward the horizon in a flash far quicker than any jet. Gasps and shouts echoed across the lot as children cried and adults struggled to explain what they just witnessed. No official investigation followed, but the reports from that night, collected later by regional researchers, formed one of the earliest mass sighting events, tied specifically to a drive-in movie theater. For weeks afterward, the Skyline Drive-In became the unofficial meeting grounds for locals who swapped stories and theories about what they'd seen. Some claimed the military quietly visited the site the next morning, while others swore similar objects had been sighted in nearby towns. Though the theater eventually returned to its normal routines, the night of the mysterious disc lingered in local memory. Patrons who returned to see films under the open Texas skies often found themselves glancing upward more than at the screen, wondering if the strange visitor might choose another audience someday soon. Bristol, Tennessee, 1963. On a cool September night, the Twin City Drive-In was filled with the soft rumble of engines shutting off and the glow of cigarette tips flickering in the dark. Again, families settled in as the projector beam cut through the evening air, illuminating a light haze that had drifted from the nearby hills. As the first feature played, several patrons noticed an unusual silver reflection high above the screen, something that shimmered like a mirror catching stray moonlight. At first, most dismissed it as a plane banking at the right moment, but the reflection held perfectly still. The object soon revealed more of itself, resolving into a brilliant metallic oval hovering just beyond the projector's reach. It emitted a faint bluish halo, and the crispness of its edges struck witnesses as strange for something so distant. A teenager near the back row switched off his radio speaker in disbelief, listening for the telltale sound of a propeller or a jet engine of some sort. But the night remained unnervingly quiet. The silence seemed to deepen as more viewers turned their attention skyward, murmurs sweeping through the lot. Slowly, the craft began to move, descending with a kind of poised precision that felt intentional. Its light rippled over the tops of parked cars, casting faint reflection across chrome bumpers and dusty windshields. A few witnesses later said they felt a vibration in the air, something subtle but physical, as though the object brought the atmosphere itself into tension. The object passed directly behind the movie screen, creating a surreal moment where its bright reflection framed the edges of the film like an unintended special effect. Moments later, the object shot upward with impossible speeds, disappearing into a cloudless patch of sky and leaving behind only a faint shimmer. The film continued to roll, but the mood of the theater had transformed. Few could focus on the movie after witnessing something so completely outside their expectations. The incident itself was quietly discussed for years, mostly among locals and theater regulars, eventually becoming one of Tennessee's most quietly enduring UFO legends. An elegant metallic visitor that paused above a film before vanishing into the night. Abingdon, Virginia, 1966. The Abingdon Drive-In was nestled among wooded hills, giving movie nights a cozy, secluded feeling. On an evening in 1966, a family parked near the front row to enjoy a double feature, unaware that the biggest surprise of their night would come from the skies behind the screen. Shortly after the second film began, the father noticed a metallic shimmer descending through the darkness. He brushed it off as a helicopter or distant plane. That was until the object resolved into a classic domed disc gliding silently downward. Other patrons soon spotted it as well. The disc moved with an almost casual slowness, tilting slightly as it approached the tree line. Its surface reflected the theater's projection light in odd, rippling ways, as though the metal weren't quite solid. As the object drifted lower, the sound of the movie faded, replaced by murmurs across the lot as people stepped out of their cars to get a better look. Some children screamed, while others were laughing, convinced this was somehow a part of the show. The domed craft eventually settled just behind the screen, hidden from full view but close enough that its glow illuminated the trees. A few brave witnesses attempted to approach the fence line, but the disc rose again before they could get near it. It ascended with smooth, deliberate motion, growing smaller as it climbed further and further into the air, finally vanishing into the night without leaving any visible trail or sound. Though the sighting lasted less than a minute, it left the audience rattled and buzzing with speculation. Local UFO newsletters later published summaries of the witness accounts, noting that the unusual detail about the reflective, almost fluid-like surface. Local UFO newsletters later published summaries of the witness accounts, noting the unusual detail about the reflective, almost fluid-like surface. Though no official authority investigated the event, it remained a staple of local legend. Residents returned to the Abingdon Drive-In, often remembering the night when something undeniably strange descended behind the screen, lending an otherworldly backdrop to what should have been a routine night at the movies. Tucson, Arizona, 1974. Warm desert nights were part of the charm of the Desert Star Drive-In, where moviegoers often arrived early just to watch the sunset bleed across the mountains. But on an evening in May of 1974, as the last streaks of orange faded into indigo, the audience settled in for a popular science fiction double feature. Ironically, it was during the first film, a story about alien visitors, that something distinctly non-cinematic appeared above the distant ridge. A reddish, pulsating light rose slowly from behind the mountains, moving with a steady elegance that drew immediate attention. As the light grew larger, its outline became clearer. A structured, oval craft with a softly luminous underside that shifted between red and amber hues. It moved with absolute stability, unaffected by the wind or turbulence, and it glided toward the theater in a smooth, descending arc. When the object reached a position above the far left side of the lot, its glow rippled across the metal speaker poles, creating tiny reflections that shimmered like fireflies. The alien science fiction film continued to play, but by now, nearly everyone was staring wide-eyed at the craft instead. The object hovered for an extended amount of time, bathing the gravel in a warm, otherworldly glow. A few witnesses reported hearing a faint tonal hum, something melodic yet mechanical, though many others insisted the object was completely silent. A handful of patrons actually tried to photograph the object, but the low light and slow shutter speeds of 1970s cameras failed to capture anything more than smears of light. The atmosphere felt thick with anticipation, as though the craft was observing the crowd as intently as the crowd was observing it. Finally, the object drifted upward, accelerating gradually before shooting off in a sharp diagonal path. It disappeared into the desert skies, leaving behind stunned silence and the faint smell of warm dust stirred up by shifting winds. Local newspapers later mentioned the event briefly, and regional UFO investigators collected several consistent reports of the glowing, pulsating craft. For the Desert Star Drive-In, the incident became a defining moment in its history. A night when the fictional aliens on the screen were overshadowed by a visitor whose presence felt anything but imaginary. Bakersfield, California, 1976. In the mid-1970s, the Bakersfield Drive-In was one of the city's most popular weekend hangouts, crowded with families and teenagers and late-night workers eager to relax beneath the desert sky. On one warm summer Friday, a crowd packed the lot to watch a newly released feature film, unaware that the real spectacle would occur far above the projection booth. As the second act of the movie unfolded, A faint glowing line drifted across the upper atmosphere. At first, most assumed it was just a meteor, but the light slowed, grew brighter, and began descending. The object soon revealed itself as an enormous glowing craft, elliptical in shape and moving with a strange deliberate grace. Witnesses described it as brighter than a street lamp, yet not blinding, with a golden hue that shimmered as though wrapped in heat waves. It crossed silently from one end of the sky to the other, passing directly behind the towering movie screen, making the projected image warp and flutter as though the UFO's presence interfered with the equipment. Dozens of viewers later testified that they initially believed the theater was testing a new special effect, until the parking lot lights spontaneously dimmed. As the craft hovered over the far end of the lot, a ripple of fear and excitement washed through the crowd. People stepped out of their cars, craning their necks, shielding their eyes, or fumbling for cameras that were way too slow to capture the moment. The craft then paused for several long seconds, bathing the gravel in a soft amber glow, before suddenly rising vertically at tremendous speeds. It vanished into the night sky as abruptly as it had appeared, leaving behind a sense of confusion to all who saw it. Police dispatchers reportedly received a surge of calls from the area, but no official explanation was ever provided. In the weeks that followed, several UFO groups gathered statements from more than 100 witnesses. Their descriptions, though varied in detail, aligned strongly in the object's size, color, and unusual movement. For many Bakersfield residents, that night marked the beginning of a long fascination with the idea that something extraordinary had visited during such an ordinary film. Even years later, patrons who had been there could vividly recount the moment the golden craft drifted behind the movie screen and turned a typical summer showing into one of California's most memorable UFO events. LaGrange, Kentucky, 1977. The Bluegrass Drive-In had a reputation for drawing big crowds on weekend nights, thanks in part to its rural setting and wide-open skies. On an autumn evening during a popular double feature, a bright orange glow emerged above the tree lines. At first, only a handful of people noticed, assuming it was a plane or a flare. But as the light drifted closer, its perfectly spherical shape became apparent, hovering with a steadiness like many of these other cases before it. Within moments, dozens of viewers had stepped out of their cars to watch. The orange sphere pulsed with a warm, rhythmic glow, casting shadows across the cars and gravel. Witnesses described a prickling on their necks and arms, as though the atmosphere itself was reacting to the object's presence. Despite its brightness, the orb emitted no sound, and its movement was unsettlingly precise. The object lingered long enough for people to shout for others to look, creating a chain reaction of awe and disbelief throughout the lot. Then, in an instant, the sphere winked out, disappearing with no gradual fading, no upward flight, no streak across the sky. It was simply there one moment and gone the next, leaving an unusual stillness behind. Though investigators collected several reports, no official explanation ever emerged. And the case remains compelling because of the object's simplicity. A single glowing sphere, completely silent, behaving in ways no craft should. For those at the drive-in that night, the memory of the orange sphere floating above the screen became forever woven into the place itself. A moment where the ordinary rhythm of the movie-going collided with something utterly inexplicable. Aurora, Colorado, 1981. The Sunset Drive-In in Aurora had become a weekend staple, especially for young families seeking a night out that didn't require a babysitter. On this particular August evening, the lot was nearly full. rows of cars lined neatly beneath a cotton candy sky fading into dusk. As the movie trailers rolled, a sudden flash lit up the western horizon, bright enough to momentarily wash out the screen. Patrons shielded their eyes, assuming it was lightning, yet the sky showed no storm clouds, just a single, dazzling burst that seemed to pulse rather than fade. Minutes later, a glowing sphere emerged from the same direction, drifting toward the theater with an unhurried steadiness. Its color shifted from white to pale green, then to an electric blue that made the air feel sharp and cold. Witnesses described it as about the size of a compact car, though difficult to gauge precisely because of its intense luminosity. What unsettled many was how it moved, not in an arc like a plane, nor in a straight line like a satellite, but in a smooth, deliberate glide, as if responding to some invisible current. The sphere hovered over the center of the lot, casting the entire area in a strange blue tint. The movie's audio hummed from the car speakers, but the image on screen flickered as though the projector struggled against interference. Some parents ushered their children back into the vehicles, while others stood transfixed. Several witnesses later reported feeling a static tingling on their skin, as if the object carried a charge that bled gently into the air around them. The sphere lingered for nearly 30 seconds, rotating slowly without revealing any mechanical features. Then, with a sudden brightening and a crack-like snap, the object shot straight upward and vanished into the night. The snap was later described by witnesses as similar to an electrical discharge or the breaking of a small branch amplified unnaturally. The event itself attracted brief local media attention but was quickly overshadowed by other news stories of the time. Still, those who were there remembered it vividly, speaking of that night when a glowing blue sphere hovered above the Sunset Drive-In, and began to rearrange their understanding of what might share the skies with all of them. Warwick, New York, 1995. On a warm July night, the Warwick Drive-In was screening the movie Waterworld, and the parking lot glowed with headlights shutting off in waves as the feature began. Fog from earlier in the evening had just lifted, revealing a crisp, star-dotted sky above the hills. Halfway through the movie, a bright white light appeared at the edge of the tree line, catching the attention of several moviegoers who thought at first that it might be a low-flying aircraft. But the light grew sharper, more geometric, and soon 3 distinct points formed the unmistakable outline of a triangular craft. The object drifted slowly and silently over the theater, as though surveying the rows of cars and the hundreds of spectators below. Witnesses described a black, sharp-edged triangle blocking out the stars, with lights that were bright yet strangely diffuse, casting little illumination toward the ground. The triangular craft passed directly over the screen, creating a moment of collective gasping as its silhouette momentarily replaced the film. Some viewers stepped out of their cars involuntarily, drawn by a mix of fear and awe. For nearly a full minute, the craft remained in view, hovering at an unnervingly low altitude. Several patrons reported a sensation of pressure or heaviness in the air, while others felt an eerie calm, as if the world had briefly paused. Then, without so much as a sound, the triangular craft tilted and glided away at a speed that no conventional aircraft could match. It disappeared beyond the hills to the north, leaving behind stunned silence and a parking lot full of people who had no idea how to interpret what they had just witnessed. In the days following the event, investigators from the Mutual UFO Network gathered multiple detailed eyewitness statements. The consistency of the descriptions especially concerning the size and silent flight of the triangular object, has made the Warwick case one of the more credible mass sightings in the region. For the Warwick Drive-In itself, the incident became part of its local lore, retold each summer as the screen lit up, and patrons remembered the night when something far more advanced than Hollywood's special effects drifted overhead. Taken together, these encounters paint a curious portrait of how the extraordinary can just slip seamlessly into the fabric of everyday life. Drive-in movie theaters were built for entertainment, for shared laughter and quiet dates in the soft hum of summer nights. Yet in these moments, they became accidental observatories to something beyond our understanding. Whether these sightings were brief visitations, deliberate observations, or something else entirely remains a mystery. What endures is the sense of wonder shared by hundreds of unsuspecting witnesses who looked up from the silver screen to find something far more compelling moving silently overhead. And as long as we continue gathering under open skies, perhaps these strange cinematic visitations are far from over. That is it for our main episode, but it does not end there. Head on over to Patreon to hear an exclusive bonus episode, where one of our listeners shares their own drive-in movie theater UFO encounter. And trust me, it is one hell of a story. To listen or to join, visit patreon.com/somewhereskies. That's patreon.com/somewhereskies. And I want to take just a brief moment here to ask a favor of you guys. Please subscribe or follow Somewhere in the Skies over on Spotify. There you can watch or listen to the video version of the show. We have recently partnered with Spotify to bring full video episodes to the platform. And while you absolutely do not have to watch the entire video, just clicking the video version lets you listen the same way you would anywhere else. And I'm just being completely transparent here with you guys. We make a significantly larger portion of ad revenue when you listen or watch on Spotify compared to other platforms. And trust me, I know switching apps is not always ideal, but Spotify's interface is smooth and user-friendly. And I genuinely think you'll love the experience over there. More importantly, your support there helps us immensely in our goal to make Somewhere in the Skies a full-time endeavor. You listening and watching on Spotify truly helps make that dream a reality. So head on over to Spotify, follow, leave a comment under the videos, and I thank you for your support. If you have a UFO story you'd like to share, reach out at the email in the show notes. We would love to hear your story and maybe even have you submit to our acclaimed Witness Accounts series on the podcast. Again, check the show notes for our email or reach out to me on socials. Thank you to Spectre Vision Radio, and a very special thank you to you for listening. Remember, keep your feet on the ground, but never stop searching somewhere in the skies or above the drive-in movie theater.
And now, folks, it's time to say goodnight. We sincerely appreciate your patronage and hope we've succeeded in bringing you an enjoyable evening of entertainment. Please drive home carefully and come back again soon. Good night.
Spectre Vision Radio.